So welcome everyone to the 7 C's of Resilience. I had the pleasure of working with Francine this week to get her ready to present this in a virtual setting, and there's a lot of really great information in this program. One of our staff members had previously heard Francine talk on this topic and was so just impressed with how it relates to our military kids and how we can help our military kids be more resilient, that she recommended Francine to Military Family Services US. So on behalf of MFS US, I welcome you to today's session. And Francine, I'm going to go ahead and pass you the ball, and you can begin.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for coming. Welcome. I will tell you a little bit about myself and then ask you a little bit about yourselves. And I'm happy to be here and honored that you took the time this afternoon to come hear about resiliency. And as Joanna said, your kids are probably more resilient than you even think because they deal with a lot of changes. So they're probably well on their way, and it can be nice to have that confirmed. I am a child and family therapist in the DC area in Northern Virginia, and I've been working with children and families for more than 20 years. And I just love giving workshops. It's my favorite thing to do besides hanging out with little kids. It's my favorite thing to do. And so I do a lot of workshops in the area, and I have a 14-year-old daughter. So maybe if you all would feel comfortable telling us where you're living right now and maybe how old your kids are, that would be great. Oh, and so if you raise your hand, then I'll call on you in order, and you can unmute yourselves and then introduce. Or you could do it in the chat.
So Kara?
Kara?
Sure. Hi. I work at a military family resource center in Halifax, Nova Scotia, so I've been supporting families for over 17 years. The whole area of resiliency is particularly interesting to me, and I do have a 10-year-old as well, so I'm wearing 2 hats. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. I'd love to come visit you up there sometime.
Excellent. We'd love to have you.
All right, Tammy?
Hi there. So I actually currently work for Military Family Services in the United States as the outreach coordinator. I just moved back from San Diego on my own posting, and I actually am a mom of 6 kids. I have 1 adult kid who is 23. My youngest is 8 years old. I have a 9-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and like I said, my oldest is 23. We most recently adopted 4. I was a family of 2 biological sons, and I adopted 4 girls, so hence why so many children. And that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for being here.
And Bona put in the chat, she is from Alexandria, that's Virginia, and she has a son, age 10. And welcome, Melissa. We're just sharing with the rest of the group where you're located today, and also the age of your children, so that we know what age group we're working with.
Okay, sure. I can't tell if you can hear me or not.
We can, yes, perfectly.
Okay. There we go. I'm calling in from Rome, New York, and I have 4 daughters, ages 8, 7, almost 7, 5, and 3.
Awesome. You're going to have fun teen years, huh?
I know. It'll be a little crazy.
Yeah, well, welcome. Sorry, I was expanding my chat as you were talking, so I wasn't able to respond, but thank you.
And Francine, when you see the little computer come up next to Jessica's name, feel free to, there it is. Go ahead and ask her. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
Thanks.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, I can't do both. I can't have chat and everybody's names up, so I'm trying to figure
that's okay.
this out.
I'll monitor chat for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Jessica, we're just sharing where you're joining us from today and your children, how many children you have and their ages.
I'm calling in from Houston, and I have one daughter, and she's 13 months.
Perfect. Oh, a little one.
Fun. So you're getting a jump start on this.
Yeah.
Great, great. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I will go ahead and jump in, and we will start with the slides. And we'll just, yeah. What I wanted to say is feel free to comment or ask questions during the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end. It's actually a lot better if you don't wait until the end. It makes it more interesting. And chances are that if you have a question, somebody else has that question as well. I'll also stop throughout and ask for comments and questions. And Joanna will help me with the chat box, so that would be wonderful. So let's get started. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about helicopter parenting. And I won't ask you if you might be a helicopter parent, but if maybe you know a helicopter parent, you can give us a check or smiley face. And I'll tell you what a helicopter parent is. It's somebody who is over-controlling, over-protecting, and over-perfecting. That's kind of how it's defined. And obviously, we are all helicopter parents at one moment or another. We all have those moments where we do a little bit too much for our kids. It's more the constant and consistent helicopter parenting that becomes a problem. So yeah, Bona and Kara both know, and Tammy know helicopter parents. I think we all do, and we all can see it in others, but it's not so easy to see it in ourselves. It feels like we're just protecting them. We're just helping. We talk about helicopter parenting as a fairly new phenomenon in response to overcompensation for failings in our own childhoods, whether real or imagined, anxiety and stress about the future, increased violence at home and around the world. So at home, obviously, is just closer to home and around the world. And then overexposure to negative media stories. We are living in a time where we hear of every horrible thing that happens, and it really takes a toll on our psyche, and it makes us feel like we have really good reason to hover. But the fact is that it's not so good for our kids when we do hover, because it limits them and gives them the message that they're not capable, that mom or dad has to jump in and save them at every moment. And obviously, the moments where we do save them sometimes can be really important, and when they're really little, we are literally, saving their lives most of the time, but it can be hard to let go of the idea that they always need us to be right there. So the difference between engaged and over-involved, or helicopter parenting, is the engaged parenting leads to increased feelings of love and acceptance, stronger self-confidence, and it provides guidance and opportunities for our kids to grow. Whereas the over-involved parenting leads to decreased confidence and self-esteem, underdeveloped coping and life skills, increased anxiety, and very often a sense of entitlement. And none of us really want that.
No.
Yeah. So, most of us are afraid our kids are going to fail, and what happens when they fail, and the meltdowns that come when they fail, and the idea that failure might impact their lives forever. But the truth is, failure is not all bad. Failure can actually teach our kids new skills and help them understand that they can handle challenges. Some of the important things to know when our kids are faced with failure is to know know your kid, know what stresses they can and can't handle. It's usually a little bit more than we think, but most of us do know our kids, and they know that they can handle, getting a little bit less sleep one night, but a week of it will be too much on their system. Keeping one eye on them and one eye on the adult that you're raising. So, understanding that we need to keep them safe, and we need to have the appropriate expectations for them now, but we also need to remember that we are raising an adult, where the idea is to raise somebody that can go out into the world and function on their own, not need us, as sometimes we hear about, kids calling from college and saying, I have no laundry. Not really the best way to go out into the world. So keeping an eye on the adult that you're raising. And it's important to let our children struggle and experience disappointment and failure, as long as we're mostly there and available to help them process their emotions with empathy, and to let the natural consequences approach to discipline do the teaching for us. So that means that when our kids struggle or fail, we're there for them to process their emotions. We listen, we mirror back what they're saying, we let them know that we understand them. It doesn't mean really giving advice or admonishing them or telling them what went wrong. And the natural consequences means letting the consequences do the teaching and help your child process. Let me know if that makes sense by commenting or giving me a thumbs up or smiley face. Bona, Kara.
Yeah, we're just a couple comments in the chat feature that we really love the statement about keeping your eye on the adult you are raising. What a good thing to remember.
Yeah, thanks. It is. And it can be hard to remember when you're in the moment, but really, really important. Can anybody give an example of a time recently where they maybe let their kids have a failure? Okay, well, I can. So this was kind of a small one, but my daughter texted me in a panic that she left her dance clothes. She was at dance, and that she left her dance clothes at home. And I texted her back and said, sorry, sweetie, I'm busy. I'm sure you'll figure it out. And in the past, I might have rushed to bring her dance clothes so that she didn't get in trouble or she wouldn't lose the privilege of dancing. But this time I let her feel the consequences of her actions. And notice I didn't say, well, that's too bad, you should have remembered to pack them, and kind of punished her with my words or shamed her. Because when we do that, it takes away the lesson that's in the consequence. If I just let her have the consequence, and then, when she came home and she complained about it, I said, yeah, that's really hard. It can be really hard to not have what you need. What do you think you can do to make sure that doesn't happen again? So we didn't end up getting in a fight about it, and she didn't blame me. She was able to take the responsibility for it. So hopefully, this doesn't mean it's never going to happen again, but the more times that things like that happen and they recover, they figure it out.
Francina, I'll just share what I've found dealing with older kids. Financials is a big one, right? So when we say, hey, you're making bad financial choices, and they don't listen, and they continue to make the bad financial choices, and they come and and say, hey, I'm in trouble, and not always bailing them out when that happens, so that they can learn from it.
Yeah. And that can be really hard as a parent, can't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be, because you don't want to see them suffer, but at the same hand, you know that if you keep just bailing them out, they're just going to keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good for you. Thank you for sharing.
I think I just set some groundwork for this. We'll see how it plays out for next week. But our children this year have started the opportunity. They have regular chores that they have to do every day as being part of the family. And they have the opportunity to earn a little bit of money by doing a bigger chore. And so next week they all have a book fair. And so this week I just reminded them, if you'd like to purchase books at the book fair, remember that you have opportunities to earn money all week, because Mommy and Daddy aren't going to give you money for the book fair now. So it's just interesting to see how some of them are responding to that and what will unfold next week when the book fair is here, and some have chosen to do the chores and do the work, and some have not.
Yeah, that will be interesting, right? That will be so clear for the ones that didn't.
And
But it
Francine,
might be a bit of a harder lesson for them, but I think, age appropriate and
Totally.
yeah.
And Francine, Tammy put sort of a similar type situation in the chat feature,
Oh.
saying one of my children spent all her money on junk food and did not budget for her movie night with her friends. So she was not able to go. So she let her fail on that one.
Oh, yeah. I bet she was really unhappy, but great lesson. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. All right, so that was just kind of a little side note on the 7 C's, but we will go ahead and get into the 7 C's now. And Kenneth Ginsburg talks about 2 fundamental principles at the root of resilience. And one is a parent's unconditional love as the most important force in a child's life. He talks about unconditional love, however, being coupled with high expectations for effort, character, and morality. So it's great to love them up, but unfortunately, it's not enough. I wish it was enough, but it just isn't. So making sure that the expectations are there. And the other principle is that a child will never learn life's lessons if he is protected from experiencing them. And obviously points out that children need protection from challenges that can bring irreparable harm. And unfortunately, as they get older especially, we can't always protect them from that, which is one of the reasons that it's so important to let them experience consequences when they're younger, because it is the ground, the building ground for understanding that their choices make a difference in the world and that they have power and there's things that they can do to, most of the time to avoid consequences. We know random things happen, but making good choices is really important. So the more they can practice that when they're younger, the consequences are not so dire, the more it's just part of who they are as they're older, and they make good choices then. At least we hope. So yeah, the first C of resilience is competence. And competence describes the feeling of knowing you can handle a situation effectively. We can help the development of competence by helping children focus on individual strengths. And I know as a parent, it's easier to notice their shortcomings in an attempt to help them. But if we focus on the strengths and letting them know what they are, they continue to develop the competence and confidence to keep making the good choices and to really work on their strengths. It doesn't mean we never help them work on some of the things that aren't as strong, but when we constantly harp on them, it makes them feel like they're not confident. Empowering children to make age-appropriate decisions, which, for a 3-year-old might be which clothes they're going to wear, and for a 14-year-old, it could be what classes they're going to take in high school, even if we disagree with them. And then being careful that your desire to protect your child doesn't send a message that you don't think he or she is competent enough to handle things. Does anybody have any thoughts about competence or anything they want to share?
I just really like the idea of building confidence or competency in kids, because I think as parents, when you run across young adults who don't seem to know how to cook for themselves or clean or handle basic finances, it's sad. Like, you just feel that, and you feel the weight of that responsibility where, someone failed them, and so I love that idea of building competency in your children. I think it's powerful.
Yes, I think it is. I'm sorry, I have a foster dog.
No worries. We love our dogs in the military, so it's all good.
Okay. Yeah, and I know for the competence, that one's been a little bit harder for me because I grew up as one of those super competent kids that was cooking meals at the age of 7, and so I've sort of gone the other way, and I've babied my daughter a little bit, and so she'll say, "What's for breakfast?" And so now I find myself saying, I don't know, what are you going to make? But I probably should have done that a lot sooner than 14. So I am working on it though before college. It can be hard when I think you feel like doing is a way of showing love.
The one thing that I would add too is I'm watching friends that have children that have phones and how the reliance of checking in throughout the day with a parent, checking in on how to handle things throughout the day. And it's kind of, there's a beauty when they go to school, they're not with you for that long, that they need to try to figure it out. And so, but that phone piece has kind of taken that away, and so it's not even a check-in at the end of the day, it's these check-ins throughout the day about all these elements of what's going on, and we'll see what happens when I enter that stage. But I think there's a lost opportunity when they leave the door and they go to school. That is their chance to learn competency and what it is to be without us. And I mean, it's a given however many hours of the day that they have that opportunity.
You're right, and that is a piece that has gotten lost. And so sometimes as a parent, I think it's important to not have your phone or just see it and ignore it. But that is a way that has kept, I think, us as parents feeling safer and feeling like, oh, I would know if anything happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crippling our kids.
Yeah. And my son, it's interesting, just a quick example, but band practice changed, which meant the after-school plans were going to change. And so he called my husband, but the phone connection got lost, and we never heard from him again. And I asked him at the end of the day, it all worked out, but I said, what happened if it wouldn't have worked out? And he had a plan. Well, I would have gone home, and I know where the key is, and it would have worked out. But he just it was going to be it was figured out. So it wasn't this need, and I was really proud of him. Like, he had a plan for how this was going to work or might not work, but he had the plan, and we didn't, spend the day worrying about what that could be.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, super important, and good for him that he got to feel like he could handle it.
Yeah, he had a plan.
That's great. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to confidence. So a child's belief in his own abilities is derived from confidence. Build confidence by focusing on the best in each child, encouraging qualities such as fairness, integrity, persistence, and kindness, recognizing when your child has done well and communicating that to them. Again, I know, you've probably heard different numbers, but some people say it takes 7 positives to 1 negative. Some people say it takes 11. But the idea that we don't tell our kids enough when they're doing something well, but often communicate when they're not. And we'll talk about the difference between that and praise, but being able to say, even thanks for taking your plate to the sink, where it can feel like it's a no-brainer that they've done it. Well, yeah, of course they should do it, but noticing that they have done it helps build their confidence. Praising honestly about specific achievements, but not diffusing praise that may lack authenticity, and not pushing our children to take on more than they can realistically handle. So when we talk about praise, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later too in another section, but being honest and specific about achievements, and it's sort of the idea that instead of saying, when they, your 5-year-old brings you a picture, saying, wow, I love that picture, you're such an amazing artist. But, being honest about the praise, hey, that, I really like, and being specific. I really like the way you use so many different colors in the ocean. This picture really reminds me of the beach. And even saying something about how they worked on it as opposed to the end product. I know you took a lot of time and you worked hard making this picture. How do you feel about it? So using that kind of praise as opposed to just great job, great job, great job, which ends up not meaning very much. And then, so has anybody done any reading on praise? You can just give us a check or a smiley face. Kara has, and Tammy. So a lot of you. So you probably have heard that before. Be specific, talk about the job, not the product, the work, not the product. And if you haven't, Alfie Kohn is a great writer about praise. He's done so much research on it because using inauthentic praise is actually pretty harmful to our kids. Sorry, a little side note, but I think praise is an important conversation to have and something to talk about because we're not really taught much about that. All right, third is connection. So developing close ties to family and community creates a solid sense of security that helps lead to strong values and presents alternative destructive paths to seeking love and attention. And I know that this can be maybe hard to build a sense of community if you're moving around a lot, but I also know some military families are really, really good at it just because they move around and they know how important it is. So one way a couple ways to build connection is to build a sense of physical and emotional security within your home, making sure your home feels like a place where connection happens. Allowing the expression of all emotions so that kids will feel comfortable reaching out during difficult times. So all emotions are okay. I like to talk about happy, mad, sad, and scared. And a lot of times as parents, we might have a hard time with anger when our kids express it, but it's a really important emotion that they be able to express appropriately. So I talk about all feelings being important and okay, but not all ways of expressing them okay. So understanding that they will come to you, they need to be able to come to you when they're mad at you and tell you. And that's just a really important piece of attachment and staying connected to them. And then addressing the conflict openly in the family to resolve problems, making sure that there's a means to do that. Creating a common area where the family can share time. And fostering healthy relationships, both inside and outside of the family, that reinforce positive messages. You know, your values and that your kid is a great kid, having other people in your life to remind them of that. Can anybody give an example of how you create connection in your home? You can raise your hand again or type in a comment.
It looks like Tammy has her hand raised.
Great.
Hey there. So one thing we do every night is around the dinner table. Lots of conversation happens around the dinner table, and that's where we learn about a lot of their time and their day, as well as bedtime. Just before their reading time, we have individual time as well.
Wow, you managed to do that most.
We do. It's very challenging. It doesn't give a lot of couple time. That may happen 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when the kids are all settled in their various locations. But yes, we do. Absolutely.
Good for you. That's so impressive. Yeah, but otherwise, especially that bedtime time, that's when you hear like all the secrets, you know. Anybody else have rituals that they do to keep connected?
Melissa just shared in the chat, we make sure to have family dinner every night. My husband and I also take turns having one-on-one date nights with each of our 4 girls. So they do a very similar thing to Tammy. And then Jessica said, we make an effort to sit down as a family for meals as well. Isn't that so important? I think that's one of the best times of day.
Yeah, it is. And it can be really challenging because kids are, running off to sports or play or this or that. So it's impressive that so many of you are really doing that. And I love the individual time with each kid.
And looks like you've got Kara and Melissa who have their hands raised.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Melissa.
I was just going to add to that and say, I think one of the other things in the last year I've tried to be really intentional about is not being distracted when my kids get off the bus. So to greet them warmly and to welcome them home and ask about their day, and not that be the time where I'm answering the phone or looking at my computer or any of those other kinds of things that might come up.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. All right, Kara?
I think a couple of the ones is I try to go into my son's room, so I'm the first person he gets to see in the morning, lucky him, but to connect first thing in the morning and then at night, so the kind of the beginning and the end And similar to check-ins at supper time, we do like a high-low buffalo, and I found some person that I saw, but I really love the buffalo is something just totally random. So what was your high, what was your low, but what was the buffalo? And that's the one that kind of has the most intriguing answers of the day. So that's kind of a neat one to be able to check in. But the one that I liked also was just letting your kids know all the people that are in their world, that connection of the larger, and because I think kids sometimes take that for granted. So I often tell them, do you know how lucky you are that you have these aunts or uncles, or do you know how lucky you are that you have, so he actually, in at school, they had to write something special about me, and he said lots of people love me. And, but that he understood the world was bigger than just our unit, which is really important, but that there was other people around him.
Yeah.
Those connections, I think, is really valuable when we have those, and whatever that looks like, right? Whether that be family or friends or teachers or whatever that is, but that they understand the bigger piece that supports them.
Exactly. It might not be family. Not everybody has that kind of family. So it might be a neighbor. It could be a teacher. It could be anybody, but people that care about it. Might be their piano teacher that they only see once a week, but that cares about them. Yeah. Can you what is the buffalo?
It's just this random kind of this person, I think it was Katie Hurley that might have said it, actually, the parent educator, but it was just, the buffalo is something random about your day. So it was, what's your high of the day, what's your low of the day, and then buffalo is just something random. And it has him searching for something, and he often, that's the one he wants to answer the most, and it's just something random about the day. But if you ask how was your day, they might not come up with that, interestingly enough, but buffalo is just random, just an interesting thing that happened that day. It's been really useful because the high-low, sometimes he gets into that, but sometimes not. But he'll pull out a buffalo most days, and it's just something interesting about his day.
Oh, that's sweet. I will steal that one. And I love, it kind of brought tears to my eyes when you said, that I'm the first person he sees in the morning. I think that's really sweet. And you will have people that say, your child's supposed to get up on their own and set their own alarm. And that's a nice skill too. But our kids are gone all day long, and if you're working, it's even a longer day. So I think that it's nice to have that connection. And it's, I imagine you're not crawling in bed and getting stressed. But I think that's really sweet. Yeah. And our Western culture, this is the balance, connection and autonomy.
Yeah.
We do tend to stress autonomy and the desire for kids to manage things on their own, but we forget in our culture the connection piece. So I think the balance is the key.
And yeah, there was a mom that I worked with, and she said, and I've tried to think about this often, but whenever the first thing when she sees her children, she said, I try to make sure that on my face and everything about expresses how excited I am to see them today. Like, so someone said school bus, which I thought, or how I greet them at the end of the, so that was just something. And she's a very serious lady, but that was something that she put all of her, that the first time that I see them, that they know how loved and important they are. It was really powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful. And the phone, that's another thing about the phone. I remember it stuck with me, somebody said, well, when my kids are in the car, I don't answer my phone. That is such a time for talking. So remembering, when they are home, that our phones can wait, that our emails can wait, and it's okay to say, I've got to do this, I've got to take a work phone call or whatever it is, but to not constantly be distracted by our electronics, so that when we are paying attention to our kids, we're really paying attention to them. That really helps them feel connected. All right, and character. So our children need to develop a solid set of morals and values to determine right from wrong and demonstrate a caring attitude towards others. To strengthen our child's character, start by being a good role model. Again, they really look to us for guidance, and they do what we do. Demonstrating how behaviors affect others. So I think that a lot of times we assume that our kids just understand how their behavior affects others, and they don't. They really need us to tell them, when you did A, B happened. When you did A, you know, your sister felt this way. And that's not saying, it's not blaming them. It's not saying you made your sister mad, but saying when you did this, she got mad. I want you to understand how your behavior affects others. And then helping your children to recognize himself or herself as a caring person. Again, pointing out when they do things right, and they do things that are caring. When they read to their sibling, or when they, you know, take the dog for a walk for us, or whatever, bring us a cup of tea. And demonstrating again the importance of community. And community can be, it could be your neighborhood, it could be school, it could be your soccer team, it could be, you know, it could be church, it could be so many things. Community, it could just be, you know, a friend that you get together with on a regular basis, but making sure that they understand that community is important. And encouraging the development of spirituality. This could be organized religion or mindfulness, or just enjoying nature together. It doesn't have to be what we think of as organized religion, but making sure your kids know that not only there's sort of a bigger picture, but that we're all connected. And then avoiding racist, misogynistic, hateful statements or stereotypes. Should go without saying, but that's important too. And the fifth C is contribution. So resilient children realize that the world is a better place because they're in it. Understanding the importance of personal contribution can serve as a source of purpose and motivation. Teach your children how to contribute by stressing the importance of serving others, by modeling generosity. Again, this might be taking a meal to your neighbor, or it might be working at the food bank. It doesn't have to be huge, but for some people it is. And then creating opportunities for your children to contribute in some specific way that makes them feel good. And even young children can contribute. You know, as somebody said, as part of the family, we all do chores. That's contributing. And I love looking at chores that way. You know, chores are a contribution to the family that you live in. We all do them. We all take part in the family. We all make a difference. Would anybody like to share how they help their kids feel like they contribute, or things you do as a family? Melissa?
We're fairly active in our church here in Rome, and one of the things our church does is provide opportunities for families to serve the community. And so every second Sunday we stuff envelopes for different nonprofit organizations. And so all of my kids, even my 3-year-old, she's a runner, so she collects envelopes and brings them to the stampers. Some of them can do the sealing, some of them do the stuffing, but they all are able to participate, and then, you know, like our pastor talks about why we're doing what we're doing. This is a small way that they can serve and know that they're helping. And so we do some other things through the church too, but that one came to mind first.
Yeah, how great you can do that as a family too.
Yeah, and there's about 20 or more families and all the little kids all working together to get this done, so it's pretty great.
I bet it's fun. Thank you. All right, and coping. Learning to cope effectively with stress, especially nowadays, will help your children be better prepared to overcome life's challenges. Positive coping lessons include modeling positive coping strategies on a consistent basis, guiding your child to develop positive and effective coping strategies, and not condemning them for negative behaviors. This is a really important one. We just live in such a stressful society. This is one where I know people love to hear from other people what you do. How do you and your kids deal with stress? Anybody have anything?
I like meditation.
Mhm.
So taking a step back from a situation and sort of clearing my head and focusing on something, more peaceful, just to clear my head and bring myself back to then deal with something. And then Tammy put in the chat box, exercising. So biking, hiking, walking the dog, and teaching kids, like, that's an effective way to deal with stress.
Mhm.
Bona says, when I'm stressed, my husband sends me to the gym. That's a smart, smart man. Melissa, taking deep breaths, praying, journaling. Yeah, all good ones.
All fabulous ones. And they're all the ones I wrote down. I also put listening to music. And so even if your kids won't meditate with you, mine won't. What kid wants to do what their mom teaches all day long. Just them seeing you do it is great modeling. They really they pick up on that and maybe use it next time. So you're typing those in. Thank you. Yeah, laughter, meditating, exercise. And, I think people sometimes think if you take a break, oh, you're just avoiding, but you're not. Sometimes you need to take a break, breathe, regroup, and then come back to the situation where you can think of it, you can think more clearly. Another thing that I think is important and it's not really talked about is kind of helping children understand the story that they make up is often more stressful than what's really happening. So being able to kind of talk about, well, is that really true? Is it true that your teacher is going to, yell at you and be really mad that you forgot your homework? Or is it that, you might get a 0 for the assignment? So that they understand that a lot of times what goes on in our head is way more stressful than what actually happens. Yeah, letting your kids see you cry. Yeah, crying is a big stress release. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, and so having those tools makes them understand that they can cope. Kids that don't have tools really can't cope.
And Francine, it looks like Melissa has her hand up.
Oh yeah, Melissa.
I think this might echo what you were saying, Francine, but I know my one daughter takes failure really with a lot of difficulty, and so we talk a lot as part of her coping that your failures aren't the thing that define you, right? Like, we all make mistakes. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. So we'll talk about things that she learned from making a mistake, but that isn't the thing that is the most important thing about her. She made a mistake, and it's okay.
Right.
And that seems to have helped her kind of process a little bit better.
Yeah. Something else that can help with that is pointing out when you make mistakes without being hard on yourself. But
Right.
saying, oh, look at that, I burnt dinner. Bummer, I guess we're going to have to go out.
Right.
Really important.
It's interesting you say that, because I was going to mention that a few slides ago. I had made a relational mistake, and it wasn't a big deal. But, there's certainly the temptation to kind of, not share it with my kids. But I chose to tell them, and I think that failure meant more to them than if I had handled it well. So they were all kinds of all day long. So you needed to apologize to Grandma, Mommy? Yes, Mommy forgot something, and I disappointed Grandma. She was upset. I made a mistake. And they had, like, lots of questions all day long about that and why I would call Grandma and apologize. So
Aw.
sometimes letting them see our failure and that you can repair, like you can make amends.
Absolutely. Because making amends is a really important part, and it's a way you fix your mistakes.
Right.
Because we're gonna make mistakes all the time, and I think that it is easy for kids to think that their mistakes are the end of the world.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a really cute book out, and I always forget the exact title, but I think it's called like Mistakes That Turned Out Good, and they talk about things that, like, chocolate chip cookies were a mistake. Somebody was trying to make chocolate cookies, and look what we ended up with. So So that's a really nice book to have at home, and I read that to kids a lot. Okay, control. So children who realize that they can control the outcomes of their decisions are more likely to realize they have the ability to bounce back. Your child's understanding that they can make a difference further promotes confidence and confidence. You can empower them by helping them understand that most of life's events are not random and that most things that happen are a result of choices and actions. So again, that's the if then, everything has a consequence. Some good, some bad, but everything has a consequence, some neutral. And then using discipline to teach, not punish or control, but using discipline to help your children understand that their actions produce certain consequences. So have you heard about, has anybody done any reading or heard about natural consequences or uses natural consequences? You can give us a check or a smiley face. Yeah, so I don't need to talk too much about that, but super important, letting the natural consequences as opposed to punishing. All the research shows that punishing doesn't work, but discipline does. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Francine, like, I really feel that this particular 7, one of the 7 C's, control, is such a huge one for military families because so much of our life experience is out of our control, out of our spouse's control, which means if it's not in our control, our kids don't have much control, right? Where you're going to live, how you're going to get there, if someone has to go on a course or if there's going to be a deployment. And it's just, and that particular issue, right, of being able to step back and say, there's all these things that are outside of my control, but figuring out, okay, what is in my control? What is in my control? What can I do? And teaching your kids, because they're seeing us go through these situations that are out of our control. And so seeing how we handle that, seeing how we figure out what can we control in this instance, you know? I don't know, I just feel like this particular one is just such a big one for our families.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would be like to have that little control over where you're going to live or when you're going to go, if, you know, mom or dad is going to be home for 6 months or not. So you're right. This is a super important one to help your kids feel safe in the world. And sometimes all you can control in the moment is how you're going to react, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kara just put in the chat, if for those of you who haven't seen it, the circle visual, where there's a circle inside and a circle outside, what I can control on the inside, and on the outside circles what I can't control, right? And knowing which is which, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that can be really, really powerful for your kids, is giving them that sense of what they can control and what choices they do have. So yeah, big one, heavy sigh. Yeah, so those are the 7 C's, and we can take some time for any more questions or comments after, but I wanted to just talk about, you know, some signs that your child is resilient. They demonstrate a genuine interest in school and other activities, solve problems effectively, you know, most of the time, is assertive and shows initiative, is empathic towards others, is responsible and trustworthy, and they set and attain realistic goals, maintains a sense of purpose and a positive outlook on life, can act independently, and can ask for support when they need it, and when they bounce back from setbacks. And when they might need a little bit of that strengthening in their, I'm not able to get to the next slide. Okay.
It's just not advancing for you, Francine?
No.
Hold on a second. I will take the ball back because it's working for me.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
When to seek help if you see dramatic changes in behavior, grades, or friendships, a lack of desire to engage previously enjoyable activities, when they have isolating behaviors, of course, that go beyond normal teenage angst, and prolonged grief, sadness, depression, or anxiety, and of course, substance use. Then it might be important to seek some help and also build that resiliency muscle. So that's it for that, but I'd love to talk a little bit more if anybody wants to share or has any questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions for Francine? Maybe specifically about you as we were going through the 7 C's. There's one that you have found particularly challenging, and maybe you'd like some references or just some ideas of how to work on that area. Or any other comments or thoughts? I know we have a few people here who work in sort of this kind of an area, so any other thoughts that you would like to share? Kara.
I really like the grouping that there's 7. I guess I see the potential, obviously, of using that, and even with working with military families, or is being able to really say the things you're doing already that are contributing to those. I think that's kind of the neat thing. It can become overwhelming as a parent to see all of the things that you need to be, but the things that you're doing already, like all the examples today, eating supper with your kids, and how significant some of these things are that parents are making such a effort regularly, and how they contribute to the resiliency of their children. So I just see the potential, and I like the organization of it, how there's 7, and kind of like that of I can see it in a workshop or whatever, but creating that list of the ahas and the recognizing the things you're doing well already, because we need a lot more of that. Just like you said, the kids, going, telling them the things that aren't working. We need to see the things that are working and just the significance of those things. I like how the 7 works for me.
Yeah, it is so important for people to see what they're doing right and realize that, that what they're doing is important. And it is something which seems small, like having dinner every night with your kids, but that's actually huge. And lots of families don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, Francine, just since we do have a couple extra minutes at the end here, one of the biggest struggles that families are facing right now is these elevated anxiety levels in young children and teenagers. And I'm just wondering, like we just were looking at that last slide, and I'll just go click back on it, when to seek help. Any thoughts about resiliency in relationship to anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, anxiety is complicated, and I think we're not really sure why our kids are so much more anxious than they used to be. We have ideas about it, but nobody has really pinpointed, is it environmental? Is it because our kids have so much information? Is it because the expectations on them are so high? Is it lack of community? I think it's probably all of the above, plus other things. And so we are seeing an increase in kids with anxiety, especially very young kids with anxiety. And resiliency is so important, because a lot of times when we have kids with anxiety, we get super anxious ourselves. And so we do want to jump in and save them and not ever put them in situations that make them anxious, because we don't want them to feel anxious. And so we tend to shield our anxious kids, I think, a little bit more than we should be, where we should be giving them the message, you got this. I get that it's hard. I get that you're struggling, and I'm here, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to get all the resources that we need to do so. And you've got this. You've got us, we've got your back, and you can handle this. And here are the tools. So I think very often, and I've been guilty of this, of shielding my daughter because she was anxious from things. And she would let me know, Mom, I've got this. I'm okay. So yes, resiliency is super important, especially for those kids, as opposed to you know, don't put them in these situations because they're anxious. That just feeds their anxiety, right? It's kind of like the more you avoid something, the more things you start avoiding because it just feels better, as opposed to pushing yourself to do something that's a little bit hard.
So possibly finding ways to incorporate these resiliency building ideas maybe will help mitigate some of that anxiety if your child is starting to struggle with that.
Yeah, definitely. It will. It may not take the anxiety away, but it will give them the sense, you know, and you build on that. Remember how hard it was, you know, to go to that birthday party where you didn't know anybody, and you did it, and it won't be so hard next time. You know, what did you like about it? Oh yeah, and I made friends, and it was easy, and I had a great time, and so next time it won't be so hard. Whereas if you say, oh, you're right, you don't have to go to that birthday party because you won't know anybody there, and it'll be uncomfortable, then next time they'll avoid it as well.
Great point. I like that, reinforcing when they make that accomplishment. That's great.
Yeah.
Kara, did you have?
Can I just? I'm gonna. Yeah. Just one. So when we tell our kids the story of what happened, it helps the neurons in their brain fire. So whenever we can tell the story of something good or bad, it helps them process it, and it helps the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain communicate, and it builds the empathy muscle, and it builds their problem-solving muscle, and all of that. So I love telling them the story, especially when something's good, and that helps them feel really good about it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So Kara, right?
Yep. Kara,
yeah. No, I just think those pieces fit in so much with working with kids that have higher levels of anxiety, and the ability to help. They have to do it in order to get through it. And Lynn Lyons uses that. You know, she talks about going swimming. You can talk about swimming and the techniques as much as you can, but the only way you're going to be able to do it is jump in the water and practice. And it's the practicing, right? That's how you do it.
Totally. Yep. There's no other way to do it.
That's a good statement. I like that.
Yeah.
Tammy?
There. So for us in the various ages, I find in our family, I mean, we call it having the chat. And so basically it's just that communication. And to me, I think in our whole world that we think of in life, communication. You know, a lot of our breakdowns is miscommunication between whoever, you know, the person you're dealing with. So I always just think, and I talk about anxiety and, you know, anxieties that we have, you know, with some of our children. And so we just have that chat. We just sit down and, you know, how does that make you feel? We talk about the situation that's making them feel anxious. We talk about, you know, what it would look like if you didn't feel anxious. You know, what are the things that are in your way making you so that you can't go, you know, that extra step. And those are things for us that, honest to goodness, I'm telling you, it's leaps and bounds through our transition with our 4 adopted children to amalgamate them into our family so that, you know, the one biological son, they're a family now, all 5 of them. There's no longer just 4, there's 5 that are connected, and now obviously with my adult child, the 6th one. So as I said, it's just having that communication.
That's so heartwarming. Yeah. The communication is essential. It sounds like you're doing such a fabulous job.
All right, well, it looks like we've had one person drop off, another person has to go. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. There will be an after-session email that I'll be sending out probably tomorrow once the recording is available. We'll have a copy of the presentation, a link to the recording, and Francine's contact information and website. So thank you, Francine, so much for joining us today, for just getting this topic out there for our military families. We truly appreciate it because we are constantly looking for ways to build resiliency in not just our kids, honestly, but us as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Francine.
Thanks for coming.